Good evening, and welcome to Beam Stream, the online showing of Beam Dance Film Festival. My name is Dwayne Holliday, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this digital showing of an event that we carried through from late summer into the fall at 4 different cities in Germany, an outdoor film festival where we mix live performance and dance films that were created during COVID. The films you'll see are from 4 dance collectives. You'll meet them later. And the format for tonight is that we will show 30 minutes of films and then have a 30-minute discussion with the artist, and then another block of 30 minutes of films and a 30 minutes of discussions with the artist. Feel free to add your comments or your questions. We look forward to hearing from you. And enjoy this presentation from the Brotfabrik Bühne Bonn, this digital presentation of Beamed, and we'll talk to each other soon.
She's a square that density by function.
The chair was implemented to make us more docile and more capable of spending time working at a desk. Training for the physical practice of the bureaucrat. The temperature you think you burn at may not be the best temperature for you. And that sounds kind of funny, but like for me, when I'm on stage, it's constant reduction. I was always that kid sitting back in his chair, moving, and it wasn't terrible, but there were teachers who were annoyed and, suggested I was tested for ADHD or whatever. And I always had this deep desire to learn a martial arts, which I never did. And only later did I realize that ballet is kind of like taekwondo with pointed feet. My name's Dwayne. I'm 42. I'm a dancer, originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but I've been living in Germany for the last 15 years now. Well, I started in high school. I had a schedule conflict and needed a physical education to graduate, and dance was the option in that time slot. So I started ballet and fell in love with it. And then at that point, my entire life changed. And along the way, started making my own work, applying for funding and making dance work, and really fell in love with doing that as well. Dance for me, and it's a theme I took up in this piece, reflektiertes Zappeln, reflective fidgeting. If I couldn't stop moving anyway, when I started dance, I realized that through this knowledge that's been carried in that time in ballet, but in many different dance forms in different ways, I was able to focus and direct this energy that was constantly happening anyway to something a little more formal. It's just been a great pleasure to know that this thing that I was going to be doing anyway, whether I wanted to or not, this constant motion, could actually be nurtured in a way that something positive came from. And it's not about body control, because I don't think we control the body any more than a surfer controls the waves. It's about noticing and understanding what's there and then working with the capacities available. And that's also part of this piece. To some extent, what we define as intelligence is the ability to sit well in a chair, right? We know that if you don't sit well in a chair, the system is going to more likely label you as that. And so to some extent, I find it ironic, not ironic, perfectly what I would expect of Northern European culture and how they treated the world in colonialism, that they would define intelligence as the ability to sit for long stretches. Of course, they're going to define it as what they do well. This piece was about wanting to position myself as firmly in opposition to certain ideas in dance that somehow technique is less reflective than not dancing. There's nothing per se bad about sitting. The problem is when culturally we think something that we have produced is universal for the human. And what I mean is that we start sitting at the age of 6. We practice it 4 to 6 hours a day before graduating to 8 to 6, and we do this over a period of years. It's really a physical practice on level with Olympic gymnasts. So when you see an Olympic gymnast, their body is so different from the sitting body that we look at it and say, boy, they have a clearly formed body. What we don't realize is we all have a very clearly formed body. We just all have a sitting body. First, I'm pointing out that sitting isn't neutral, that we all practice it. And you could argue, so what? And then we have to come to the research that points to the fact that psychologically, emotionally, and physically, sitting has a heavy toll on us. And because the sitting body is a body of like not carrying your own weight, sitting doesn't help you with anything but sitting. And so what ends up happening then is all these other things your body has evolved to do, from jumping, your organs get jostled, things get moved around, the lymph gets fetched. These things don't happen if you sit too long because the fascial and muscle and neurological connections form around that, and you just don't do it anymore. So it's not only that sitting makes you weak and unhealthy, but sitting makes you only want to sit. The sitting body is our cultural heritage. It is a body we don't get to choose to learn. The question here is, how long must movement not be performed before they really aren't any longer possible or even conceivable? Motus ergo sum. Blackout. It's more for me really about understanding that what we define as the human is very limited, culturally determined or highly culturally influenced, and not actually making us happy. I wish the viewer would be positively confronted with the fact that this practice they might have taken for granted, sitting in a stool, isn't neutral. And through this, hopefully be affirmatively empowered to maybe seek out some other physical practice that actually be everything they didn't know they always wanted.
Allein bin ich in der Nacht. Meine Seele wacht und lauscht. Oh, Herz. Hörst du, wie es klingt? In den Palmen sich entfacht, der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt. Am Meer stand ich abends oft und ich hab gehofft. Auf was? Ich sah bunten Vögeln nach. Mein Glück zerbrach wie Glas. Der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt. Der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt von einem Glück unsagbar schön. Er weiß, was meinem Herzen fehlt, für wen es schlägt und glüht. Er weiß, für wen. Komm, komm, komm. Der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt von einem Herzen, das mir fehlt. Der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt von einem Glück unsagbar schön. Der Wind hat mir ein Lied erzählt von einem Glück unsagbar schön. Er weiß, was meinem Herzen fehlt. Für wen es schlägt, für wen es glüht. Er weiß, für wen. Komm, komm. Komm.
won't clap.
Oh, please, come on.
I don't clap a single note.
Not one time.
Even if I'm alone, I won't clap. I won't clap.
Okay.
I don't clap. And no, don't even think about it. Don't clap. If I don't clap, you don't clap. I don't clap a single note. You know what? Even when I'm alone, I won't clap a single note. And you don't look don't look at me like that. Don't clap. Stop it. Stop. No. You, I see you. Don't clap. Don't even think about it. And you don't clap. No, stop it. Stop it. Don't clap. No. Don't try. No. Leave your hands. Leave your hands. Leave your hands there where they are. Don't clap. Stop. No, stop it.
Welcome everybody back at Brotfabrik, Bühne, Bonn. Welcome to Beamed Streamed. We're very happy that you've all seen the first few films of the Beam program now, and that you're here with us to talk about these films. I would like to start with a short introduction around. My name is Christina Wydra. I'm a freelance public relations and production manager based in Bonn, and I'm working, amongst others, with Tanzwerke Vanek Preuß, one of the collectives involved in Beamed, and I've also done public relations for the Beamed Tanzfilmfestival. And I'm very happy that we're here together now, and I'd like to pass on to Tobi.
Ich bin Tobias Weikamp, Tänzer und Choreograf, wohne auch in Bonn.
It's
true, we have to switch to English,
Yes,
it's true, I
thank
totally
you.
forgot about it. So I'm Tobias Weikamp, choreographer and dancer from Bonn, living in Bonn now. And yeah, I'm dancing in a few productions from Tanzwerke and doing my own stuff here. And we're doing the lovely dance films together with Dwayne Holliday. And yeah, over to you, over to Jenny.
Okay, yeah, my name is Jennifer Döring. I'm also a freelance dancer, artist, choreographer, and today I'm here representing the Make a Move collective.
Guido.
Hello, my name is Guido. I'm your chat master this evening and a kind of co-moderating person. I feel very honored to be in the circle because we have a long tradition to work with Dwayne and Toby together. And I'm the conceiving dramaturg of Tanzwerke Vanek Preuß, and here in this Brotfabrik I have the honor to be the head of board of the umbrella association of this cultural center.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Holliday. As I mentioned, I'm the founder and initiator of Beamed. I'm also a freelance dancer and choreographer, and also currently writing my dissertation in dance studies. And I'm really pleased to be able to have worked with all of these people and to be able to bring this together for Beamed.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne, you mentioned in your introduction already that Beamed has been taking place throughout the summer as a live event in 4 different cities. Can you maybe tell us a little about how you conceived that concept, how you came up with the idea of showing Beamed in different cities?
Sure, it was actually, to do it in different cities was quite easy because the relevant and the cooperating dance collectives work out of different cities. But the curation was a number of factors. First and foremost, talking to audience members, young professionals who see quite a lot of it of dance. They expressed really enjoying the glut of digital dance that came in COVID that they could watch at home, but lamented nonetheless missing that ability to come together and have a beer and talk about something before or afters. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, you had a lot of artists who made a lot of digital work in COVID. Of course, this was not only heavily funded, but it was also the first time that it was so easy to choose the format other than a performance, and it was required. And so a lot of these artists with whom I work and with whom I collaborate regularly also were making films, and it seemed to be a really nice union of these things that we could find a way to show these films in a context where more people could see them and they just didn't disappear into the internet, while at the same time also bringing people together to see these things. And then the final curation factor has a lot more perhaps to do, I mean, you could speak individually about each of these collectives embodying this, but it has a lot more to do just with who they are as people. And I think that I work with all of them because they're so interested in this social critical aspect of art. That's also so prominent here in Germany, that art fulfills the function of pointing to places that perhaps more attention needs to be paid in society. And so that was the sort of overlying curation, that all of these artists are working at the location that in some way actually criticizes a lot of the unreflective mechanisms and gestures of like advanced capitalism and neoliberalism and all these other big terms.
Okay, thank you. Maybe before we get really deeper into the contents of the films or the choice you made for which films to show in Beamed, can we just very quickly, for people who haven't been at any of the events, mention again where Beam took place? Maybe Toby, do you want to say something about that? Because we actually started Beamed in Mannheim as a collaboration with you and your partner Angie Taylor.
Exactly, yeah, we started with my collective in Mannheim, Feed Your Head Collective, with the DJ and musician performer Angie Taylor. So we brought Beamed there with Dwayne and Alessandro came, and
we did it within the frame of your contemporary dance and drag festival.
Exactly, it was also at the same time the pre-opening of the drag festival, so we involved some drag queens performances in it, and we showed the movies, and Angie was playing music in the end, and yeah, we had some struggle in the beginning because it was waning this day, and we were supposed to do it outside. So Eric Trottier with his studios helped us out, and we had a nice factory hall where we could show it, and we had a nice setup actually in the end. It really worked out well.
And in this, we were waiting till 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get the Genehmigung that we could actually do it. So it was all quite tight.
So the idea of Beamed was basically, just to explain that again, because we are in the middle of the online edition now, that the analog editions of Beamed consisted of the streams of the films.
They were beamed.
They were beamed. The films were beamed in public spaces, in different public spaces, free entrance, very mixed audiences, I would say, for the editions that I was attending myself, and there was also live performances. And I think part of your idea was just to bring people back together, to have a chance to watch dance together again in a group, and to be able to talk about it. Is that
and
right?
then you mentioned this with the live performances, and I'm glad you just want to put this back out there. The live performances were, for the most part, almost exclusively, excerpts from material from the films, so that we really wanted to bring attention to the physicality and presence of the dancers, while at the same time presenting on this two-dimensional surface.
Thank you. I think I forgot to invite people to...
Maybe this is the same thought. You can be a part of our discussion at home if you want to be writing person in the chat. So if any questions are there, I will respond.
Maybe even if somebody's watching who has been in any of the live events, that would be nice. Okay, maybe to come back to the films, because you've already seen 2 films by Tanzwerke Vanek Preuß, 3 films by Tanzwerke Vanek Preuß now, 2 very short ones, 1 longer one with Noli tangere, and 2 short films by Make a Move Collective, as well as your documentation about Sit on It and Spin.
Yes.
Can you just try to sum up shortly what your curational concept for choosing which films to show was?
Well, the concept was showing films that would allow each of these artists and art groups to show where their interests are, while at the same time showing films that, in their own way, much as the artists tend to work, really, like I said, highlight the places where they're working social critically. If we take the example of Make a Move Collective. And this is also important to say that we're not only interested in the social critical, but also the affirmative and this offering affirmative alternatives. And Make a Move, what I find interesting, what I like about their work is that they go out into spaces and it's an intervention, but at the same time it's a very, and this is actually Chris's term who filmed the movies for them. I mean, they said it's a very sanfte intervention. So it's not like they're going in there or breaking things. They're just going in with these bright colored things into public spaces where people are inhabiting and using the body in the space in ways that inherently draws attention because they're so outside of the frame of normative social behavior, even though they're gentle.
Could you, now that Dwayne opened up talking about your collective anyway, could you maybe tell us a little about the films we just saw? Because I think they are material. We've seen material from live performances that you then filmed during the pandemic in the way we just saw. Is that right?
Yeah, so we were glad that actually Dwayne invited us to be part of the Beam Festival, so we had the chance to show the films again in this frame and also apply our short performances into the festival as well. You Are Here was a project that started already 2020, end of 2020, and we thought of, with You Are Here, bringing actually small performances to the people, because people were not allowed to enter the theater. There was no possibility. So the idea was to have like maybe little flash mobs outside in the space and close to where people are living. So we chose Cologne Kalk as the main place of action. And then during that time, the lockdown was prolonged and we were still not officially able to invite people to this happening. So it was that all the happenings happened really only for the people who were present in this moment at these places. And we thought about, okay, how could we expand this a bit? And we liked a lot the places we found in Kalk. In Cologne Kalk.
Interject here? I think for anyone who isn't from Cologne, Kalk is a fairly populated portion of Cologne, but it's also, there's a higher amount of people with immigrations backgrounds in this area, and so it's also the kind of place that doesn't always get the focus of the cultural focus that comes to the more affluent and established parts of the city.
Yeah, that's also right. And so we choose to put it, You Are Here, also into a video format. And we wanted to have it in short films. And as normally our actions are viewable in some, I mean, the spectators can choose their own view onto our actions. They can watch from distance, they can see from behind or below, it depends. And in these films we were more interested in views that are normally maybe too close for the spectator in public space, because nobody comes so close to us and watch our cheek. There's rather a more distance view. And we decided to work with Chris Piotrovic and like redo the actions in the spaces, and also let he choose the eye, how to look at it and how to frame it in the end. And I really like the job he did with the rhythm and the decisions of view he took, and also to combine it that for him it was challenging also to film and to put together without music. And in the films I have the feeling like this auditive level he worked very well with in the end, rhythmical wise.
But you've always worked in public spaces before COVID,
so the
right?
work of Make a Move Collective is only happening in public urban spaces so far. Okay. And this is also, I mean, this is the main focus, and it will continue in this way.
Let me try to, just because we'll try to talk about all of the films that have just been streamed. Let me try to switch to the two short films by Tanzwerke Vanek Preuß, who were also filmed in public spaces, you could say, and also in isolation, but I think that did not have anything to do with the pandemic. Guido, can you tell us a little about the genesis of these short films that you
Of course I
produced
can.
in the desert?
So the
Please.
term public space is a little bit funny. It makes me smile because there is space without public, and this was the condition which makes us doing those things, because we were totally naked on our car at some places on. This was the first movie I'm talking about in Black Rock Playa is the name. It's that very location where the Burning Man Festival happens each year. It's a big alternative cultural festival. And yeah, we have done this, I think, several years ago. And when the Corona pandemic arrives Germany, we were revisiting our fun work just to make ourselves and others a little bit hope, to give another expectations to time, which hopefully will come back again. And I remember, I think it was the end of the first lockdown when all people were talking about exit Strategien, so strategies of exit out of the lockdown, which in my mind would have named better entrance strategies. So this is interesting, and okay. And then we grabbed some old videos and reframed them a little bit, and this was the outcome, was these both exit strategies. The second location is the most narrow part of the Grand Canyon, is the Toro Weep, where beneath our bodies it was more than 1 kilometer going down, and this makes a very interesting body awareness. So a little bit similar than could I get the virus or not? So maybe there was a link.
And I think here, if I may also, again, Guido and Carl, they have been going for years to America, to the desert, as part of an artistic, spiritual rejuvenation practice. And I'm not at all surprised that in COVID you picked back up at this material, because this is the longest stretch in the last 10, 15 years that you haven't been to these locations. And so this is also interesting, this way of artistically, I mean, you went to Spain and you had your desert time, but but this connection, you guys have a special connection to this location.
So the truth is that those desert landscapes are really the source of deep impulses, which then in the end became pieces. Several were born there.
And I find within the frame of this curation and sort of this question of like social critical, what I find interesting about the desert and your inspiration from it is, at least in my interpretation, part of the reason the desert is still there to inspire us is because it's so inhospitable that we haven't found a way to quite completely sell it yet. And so the actual fact that it's so hard to live there is one of the things that helps it maintain its beauty and its
What I find interesting about these films, looking at them now, is also the idea of human beings being isolated and I mean, I think at that time you were looking for isolation, and now we've all been trying to get away from isolation and to get back to community. So I don't know, I mean, there's even a bridge that we could take to talking about Noli mit Tangere, the other film that's just been streamed that you did, because it also deals with isolation in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I make it very short because of the time. Again, very interesting is the story of production of Noli mit Tangere, because I wanted to do a dance piece, a solo for live performance with Nora Vladiguerova, the solo dancer in this piece. And it was supposed to be shown in December last year. And then came the so-called wave breaker lockdown, which was supposed to endure only 5 or 6 weeks, and then it was 6 months in the end. When it became clear that this period of lockdown again will last longer than predicted, we decided to do a dance movie, which was based on the conceived dance piece. And then I really want and have to mention Weikamp, because he came then into it as a unique in-betweener between dance and camera working, and he knows Nora for a long time from very different productions. They are very used to be very close to each other, and we all three are from old productions we did together, and so there was suddenly a new energy which was perfectly fitting for this task to transform a solo piece into a movie. And this noli tangere, which we have seen in the stream, is only a third of the whole movie. The whole movie is, I think, 52 minutes long. Maybe a little bit too long because we were very enthusiastic about our work. But the questions I was trying to deal with together with Nora was, what are the effects of avoiding contact, of preferring distance, of locked in? And this is a little bridge to a work Toby did. We will see in the second part, Locked in Panic. This locked in situation is really against human nature, and this evokes another relationship to yourself, to your body, to communication, social situations, everything. Yeah, we know all this. Maybe it's a little bit boring to talk about, but this was the beginning of Noli.
Before we jump to Toby, I just want to quickly say, because you touched on this word community and you mentioned Toby coming in between, what I find so interesting with this whole process of Beamed in every city, in every film, at every step of the way, there's never been a moment in which I was able to do it alone. It was carried, like most things, by a number of people all contributing. And so to some extent, this community of artists working together is very necessary. And something I think we should also celebrate.
And sorry, Dwayne, for interrupting. We have to mention Angie Taylor again, because she was the musician I had the honor to work with in that movie. And I think we all worked together with her in our. Did you? Or
She Make a Move did
Make a
not,
Move not,
but we
but-
all worked with Angie
but-
otherwise.
Yeah, the others do.
I think
and
90% of the films in Beamed have I think she did the music for 90% of the films.
Because she even did the music for my solo, so
Yeah.
it comes up in the film about that piece.
Yeah.
Incredibly talented and incredible
Yeah, that's
person.
very important to mention. That's true.
And the other half of Feed Your Head Collective.
We'll see her very soon. You've mentioned a couple of things that made me think. What I found very interesting about the Beamed program is that the big spectrum of films, because we have films that seem to explicitly deal with COVID in some way or the other, and we have films that do not directly, but still they came into being because you were all trying to keep on working and find new ways of making your work, find a way to the audience. And maybe can you tell us a little about Sit on It and Spin, because I think that's a research you did.
Yeah, this is
and a performance, and then you made it into a film.
Yeah, this is a research that's been ongoing for a while. In this particular aspect of it, it was a research on the value of movement through a critique of the practice of sitting. And this was conceived right at the beginning of the first lockdown, the performance was made in the pause. Chris actually received the funding as an artist because of COVID to make the film, so it was also affected. And the week we did this performance, the week after came this lockdown that Guido spoke about. And so this was actually Chris I knew from other ways, and from the outside he said, hey, I'd like to do a documentation about you. And I said, well, I'm making a piece, so let's make it within that frame. And the original theme of Beamed was are we sure we want to return to normal for this year? And so this was, along with the Sit on It and Spin, it is a critique on things that we take for granted, that once we've sort of like turned everything up with COVID, do we really just want to go right back to those things that produced it? And so in that regard, yes, they're themes they're movies that were films, they're movies that documentations. I'm less interested in a certain type of film, and I'm more interested in the content and quality of the films and the thematic, how the artists deal with it. As we'll see with Toby's work.
Yeah, I think we will soon start with the second film block. Toby, can you maybe tell us a tiny bit about Locked in Panic before we will see it?
Yeah,
without
sure.
Giving away too much.
Exactly. Now we started at Angie and me in 2020 when the first lockdown hit us all, and we just came back from a performance from Berlin, and kind of in the car we heard that everything gets shut down. She was supposed to fly to Miami, and I was going to Italy, but we were stuck in her studio, and because the whole film kind of is based in her studio and filmed in her studios, in her music studio in Mannheim, and so we created a funding, or like we applied quickly for funding the Fonda Q did, and we got it to produce our first movie together. And yeah, I think that's it so far what I want to tell for now. All the rest you can see in the movie and you can experience in the movie. Also, we kind of used the space in certain ways and dealt with it. And and big thanks to Paul Thielmann at this point, who was locked in with us in the studio and was filming with us and editing and helped us a lot in producing the movie. You will see in, I don't know, a minute or two. And now.
Thank you.
Yeah, just before we go then, because I see there's 1 minute left, I'd just like to take this opportunity now to just quickly say that it is so important to acknowledge that because of the shifts in funding that happened through COVID, artists who were normally tied with their funding to making productions were free to make other things. And so I think you see this abundance of dance films, because the funding institutions at the national level allowed for these sorts of things. And so this is back with what Toby said. I think it's really important to acknowledge, so that this whole beam was presented by NPN, but that the funding structures know that we'd like to be able to continue to make dance films.
Okay, so now we'll see some more dance films and we'll be right back with you afterwards.
I used to waste too much time. It has for so long meant nothing to me. It may well believe that I'm dead. Am I at all concerned? Or still alive? Resting. In a quiet place. And here I live, alone, in the middle of the world. Locked. In my heaven. In my fear. And I escape. In a weightless fall.
los mit dir?
Ich bin kaputt. Ich habe Hunger. Alles scheiße.
Was willst du essen? Ich habe eine Banane, ich habe einen Apfel.
Nee, ich brauche was Richtiges.
Studentenfutter.
Nee, nicht keine Nüsse.
Gummitierchen.
Nee, ich brauche einen Döner oder so. Ja, einen Döner brauche ich. Ja, doch.
Ja, du hast verloren. Siehst du es? Da, glaube ich.
Was machst du?
Da, ich suche.
Was denn?
Ja, ich habe was verloren.
Wo denn?
Ich glaube da bei dir. Da. Nicht drauf treten. Oh.
Warte,
Vorsicht. Vorsicht.
Warte,
da.
okay.
Ey, ist immer dasselbe mit dir, Nora. Immer musst du überall hinpissen. Mann, ey.
Alter,
Nora. Nora.
es zieht so
Ey, immer dasselbe mit dir, Nora.
so pralle
Oh, immer dasselbe mit dir, Nora. Mann, immer musst du überall hinpissen.
was soll ich denn machen?
Ja, komm mal klar und halt doch mal ein
Ja,
bisschen mehr
das
zurück.
ist halt
Jetzt doch.
Natur.
Bekloppter geht's da wohl nicht. Da ist ein Abstand zu halten.
Welcome back to the second part of Beamed Online. Christina Vidra and we have flipped places now. I try to moderate. And we have seen 3 contributions to this second part. First, Locked in Panic by Angie Taylor and Tobias Weikamp, Feed Your Head Collective. The second, Trouble with Form by Dwayne Holliday and Alessandro De Matteis, movie maker, and who unfortunately couldn't be part of our discussion today, but who is very important for the whole festival. Dwayne maybe can explain this. And third, we have seen Premiere. It was a kind of summary of this festival, which I think has shown every part, every city where this festival had taken place. So first of all, because he's not here, Dwayne, could you explain to us why Alessandro De Matteis was so important for the festival and what was his role and part?
Sure. Alessandro is anyway a longtime friend. I've started working with him a good 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he not only made Trouble with Form, but he also organized the entire technical aspects of the festival. Was really wonderful in terms of helping to sit down and talk about what we need to organize, producing all of the flyers, the banners, the posters, the digital media. I mean, really did so much, and is a very talented visual artist who works in a number of formats. Also makes music, and so he did a lot of things, and he was there for all the events, and without him and Toby, who was the other person who was there for all the things, like I said, this would have never been able to have worked, because, you know, as a dancer and choreographer, you have chances to work on certain things, and you have chances to learn how to deal with digital stuff or build stages, but there's something to be said for just hiring somebody who's really dedicated themselves to this, because there's just things they can do that I don't have the skill set for. So we are keeping our fingers crossed that we will see him next time when Beam hopefully will take place a second time. He would have loved to have been here. Before we go deeper into the movie you did with him together, I want to follow a little bit the order, and I want to mention that Christina Vidra, who is now the chat mistress, she would be pleased and honored to receive a question or a comment in the chat. So don't hesitate and write your comments or questions to us all in the chat. So Toby, now to you and Angie, Locked in Panic. It was done, maybe you can tell us when was the beginning of this project, whether it was conceived to be a digital project or how it was in the context located with your other work you did together with Angie Taylor. And yeah, what was fascinating to me, I have to say this before I give you the microphone, is that this was, as far as I know, your first movie. And this is really astonishing because I spoke with Christina in the intermission. We had a short report at Kulturzeit, for example, and the team there of behind Redaktion in German, they were very fascinated the most by your movie. So where from did you take all these capacities to do this movie, and how was the very close interwoven co-creative situation with Angie Taylor?
Yeah, so the whole project started, like I said, in the beginning of the pandemic, when we came back from our piece, performing our piece Fever Dreams, which we have done the year before, 2019, which we performed in Berlin, and then we drove back to Mannheim and we went into a lockdown, because it was exactly the night when we came back when the lockdown actually got announced. And therefore I was thinking, okay, what do we do? Like, okay, let's start creating a movie maybe. And Vladiguerova had this pilot project, Take Care, in this time. So I thought, okay, let's give it a try and apply to make a movie. And it was like open for 1 week, the application process, so it was a really short period of time. And we got chosen and then had the opportunity to work on our movie and lock us in Angie's Panic Room. Panic Room is the name of her studio where she's producing her music. And yeah, it has this little corner there. It's 3 rooms actually. And in one room it has this pink corner, which got really famous in the movie, where you can see, and we placed the camera above, where usually there was a disco ball hanging. So I replaced the disco ball with the camera, and we had a friend of us also pulling some strings so the camera could go up and down. So all the effects you also see were analog. So also the camera turning, we threw a GoPro down a hill with inside a black roll, like dancers know a black roll, where you can lie your back on. And so we produced everything basically not digital but analog. And of course the fascination for me as a dancer is how to make the camera dance. So how can we move the camera, and not only us as performers moving in front of the camera, but what kind of motion can the camera bring? And so I was more fascinated also in this kind of spectrum where, yeah, it's a dialogue between the camera and the performers. And also there's a workshop next door, which I can just mention because Angie was also using props from there, and we were producing music together in her studio. The last heavy metal guitar clip was produced by us in a crazy night in her panic room in this locked-in time. And there was an old piano standing in this workshop. And the first track you hear, she placed a lot of microphones on this piano and at different points, and she created some weird sounds out of the piano. And also she started playing some notes on it, but some were totally off tune because it's an old piano in the workshop, but she started playing with that and created some text on it. So it's all kind of also really placed in this kind of panic room, and also the workshop next door, which kind of, yeah, all referred kind of into the movie. And I mean, the basic idea was also, the question was, can you be more free when you are locked in? Can you expand your mind because you're dreaming more, because you don't get distracted by Facebook or by trying not to miss a party or something?
And what's your insight? Is it like that? Is there,
there's a certain beauty in it, because you can just shut down your brain a bit and can just focus on one thing. Like, you know, we're always busy with doing this project and performance there and working on a lot of different things at the same time, and it's really nice to focus on one project, and you're forced to it because you don't have anything to do anyway, and there's also no social pressure to go to a party or to meet people, or because you are anyway not allowed to. So this situation gave it a lot of freedom, I would say. So yes, it is like this.
Thank you. So again, if you want to pose a question to Toby or also to Angie, his partner, then do not hesitate and write it in the chat. Of course, there is a lot to ask concerning this movie. Personally, I want to know, where was this situation shot? Where is this meadow, this green outer landscape in the diagonal split of the screen?
Yeah, we were looking for it for quite a while, for that exact place, because my idea was to have an angle where you can just cut the camera screen in half. So first I thought I can cheat it and use a hill and tilt the camera a bit, but then in the post-production I figured out that the clouds are going a bit off. Because you can see the cheat, right? So we were looking again for a better place. So we found an old place where they threw usually the garbage, but now there are sheep living on it. So we kind of went over the fence, went there, placed the camera, and I was throwing myself down the hill. I had a lot of like itches and stuff afterwards, because you can imagine the sheep's poo there, so it wasn't so nice afterwards, but it was a really nice experience to find exactly that spot where you can really have that angle, and to really have the analog effect also, where you can cut the screen. And the most part of that scene was like to find this specific place where you have this exact angle. So it took us like 2 weeks to find that spot.
Thank you, Toby, for sharing this short amount of time with us, the process of that piece. Toby and Nora also were dancing in the second movie we have seen. It was done by you, Dwayne, and Alessandro De Matteis. So the first thing which dropped in my mind when I saw it first was the title, Trouble with Form, and I thought, yeah, this is clear. Apparently they had trouble with the form and they decided to name it like that. But then afterwards it was a new information for me that there is another story behind. Maybe you can give us a short introduction. Where from is this title inspired, and what does it has to do with the material the dancers are using?
I think the trouble with form for me as a title is a general question that could be directed towards all sort of gender, racial issues, you know, this need we have to define the human in such a way that people get excluded. There's the problem with this sort of like Platonic ideal. And in regards to this work, the idea came when I was researching for my doctorate, and I was at a university, and there was a professor teaching a Forsyth phrase to some of the students. And they were talking about how the piece has long since become mostly improvisation, and the men don't even wear sweatpants and socks. And so I just asked the teacher, well, you know, do the women? And she said, no, the women had to wear leotards and do it in point shoes for a lot longer. And so it was sort of this interesting place where certain things, even within this quite famous deconstruction world of Forsyth, still were sort of maintained, certain gender issues. So we took a minute of a very famous piece, in the middle someone elevated, and we took the video of Sylvie Guillem and Laurent Hilaire. And we learned 1 minute of this, and the two dancers learned both roles, the guys' roles and the girls' roles. They got to the point where they could switch on the fly between them, as comes up in the material. And the men's material was really funny because it's just, you know, sort of manipulating the girls. So everything they did on the bridges was just the man's stuff. And so all of the material from the entire film came from 1 minute of this Forsyth period material. And I think choreographically, for me, I'm interested in maybe, like, at least for myself, evaluating whether or not you need perfect material, back to this question of the trouble with form. And through repeating the same material over and over and over, but allowing it to change through iteration, for me at least, it points to not necessarily needing to have good material, as long as you have good process and dancers who are willing to take that sort of. So that was, I think, the wrapping around the title, The Trouble with Form.
And Toby?
It is also like, because you have such an ideal or like an idol, like a Sylvie Guillem, and you're kind of trying to achieve her form, but you can't.
This
but
is
of
impossible.
course, I don't have my leg behind my ears. So I'm already, by trying to recreate exactly what she is doing, I'm already failing. I'm already troubling with the form she's having, because I'm not achieving that. So we achieve our own qualities in it. But of course, this ideal form of what she is giving or presenting, you're already failing when you try.
Yeah, and I think in that regard, it is this question about virtuosity. And in this video, she is the extreme of virtuosity. And I think I wanted to highlight a different type of virtuosity, the virtuosity that these two dancers have of being able to switch in and out of roles, grab each other, be partnering one moment, and then feel the impulse of the other who takes over. And so there's a sort of virtuosity that, while I absolutely respect ballet, it's not part of their education, but it is part of what contemporary dancers can do. So I wanted to take this extreme ballet virtuosity and see, is there anything aesthetic relevant? If none of those things that actually made this special were actually applicable, can you still do something interesting with it? And so that was, yeah.
So if I put the next question, and is there something relevant?
I think
this would blast the evening, I think. But there is a funny moment when you mentioned gender, form, concerning the fitness, and concerning an image which was given by Sylvie Guillem, which is not achievable. And also there is this question of the P overtake by Nora Vladiguerova, suddenly she behaves like a man, and she is apparently very proud that she can pee in a standing posture. How was this?
Well, this idea with the foresight, the repetition and reiteration was something that I was busy with for a while. And when I proposed this with Toby, he had mentioned how much he was interested in bringing some dance theatrical elements, and he's a big fan of the Deviate films, and so we wanted to also bring something in that wasn't just dance. And for me, another big interest I have is the body, and this question with the two-dimensionality of the film. Like Toby said, how to move the camera, and I think that's fabulous. And along with that, my interest is more in the direction of how to maintain the bodiliness of dance when it's in the surface, which is why he was eating and why the peeing, and this also reference to bodily functions. But with the peeing, I think it was less that she was proud that she could pee standing up. I think at least, anybody can read it how they want. But it was more just playing with what it would be if they really exaggerated the roles, and this sort of territorial pissing and this marking and this poor embarrassed Toby's like, come on, people are watching, and like that. This was, for whatever reason, to put a bit of humor into it was also important. And so when we talked about it, and they were like, okay, yeah, let's try it. And all I can say is that I still like it. Whatever else it may be, I'm still happy that it's in there.
I want to integrate Jenny because she, although she was not a part of that project, she did another movie which we haven't, for time reasons, shown now. This was somehow, as far as I understood, also related, because there were different questions concerning deconstructing ballet techniques or ballet imaginations of the physicality of dance. And I want to ask Jenny whether you could share a few of your experiences of this kind of workshop process, which was guided or initiated by Dwayne, and what was your insights afterwards?
Yeah, I'd like to do, yeah. So this was part of Up Extraction. We only saw bits of it in the last trailer of the festival, and in the frame of dealing with forms, you mentioned it already, working with the form of ballet movements and qualities, and for me it was very interesting. I mean, we are using tools like bands or weights or manipulation. I mean, you also said that there was in the duet you used, there were a lot of stretching of the other body involved, and in this research for me it was very interesting to experience how this kind of manipulation, either through objects or through the other body, gives me afterwards not a memory, something that is happening in the brain. I try to reproduce it, but there is a clear physical change happening that I afterwards can afterwards live and dance in. So this is more a memory of the body or a transformation of the cells. Maybe that sounds a bit crazy, but to move within this, and how this changed my experience of aiming for a form that I maybe have in my mind or in my visual form that I try to achieve, as you said, like hitting my leg onto my head, in comparison to going into it with the full experience of in what state is my body in this moment, and what possibilities are opened through the exercises before. Yeah.
And if there is another movie done by Dwayne, for example, or also done by your own Make a Move collective or by Feed Your Head collective, if there is another chance for another edition of the festival Beamed, which topic would be the most interesting for you to grab around, to dig in? Have you thought about this?
I have. I mean, I know for myself, for instance, that I'm trying to figure out time with Toby right now. I'm continuing this post-colonial gender, queer, and trans deconstruction of ballet.
Of course.
Of course. And I know that next year I want to work with the question or an interrogation of femininity with Toby in Bezug auf, in relationship to the character of Nijinsky. But also touching in with things that are relevant now, from Harry Styles to this question of when is femininity not exclusively directed towards pleasing patriarchy, so to speak, but what is femininity is something that is its own sort of thing aside from gender or Geschlecht, like actual what do we say? Besides gender, there's also the body, the capacity. You know, like
very interesting. Isn't very interesting the fact that you, as a man, are trying to involve yourself in questions which are dealing with femininity, and I'm just wondering, because in a lot of contemporary discourses, it's a very important question: who is dealing with what? And I ask myself, what do you say, or what do you say as women? Is Dwayne allowed to do a piece about femininity? Is there a irritation?
And I think it's important, just to qualify that, I don't mean being a woman. Or it really is this question of femininity. And of course, that might be indexed in the West on the woman, but there's not necessarily a natural anchor there. Femininity is just on the polar opposite of masculinity, however the culture decides to lay them out. But
so this is a perfect illustration of what you wanted to or what you wanted to express in the initial impulse of this festival. You asked, are we really want to go back to normal? Maybe you can tell us what's behind this.
Yeah, I mean, we can touch on this topic of femininity. I think just quite simply to recognize, and this is why I also found Toby fascinating. I know so many. I think in general we'd all be a lot happier if our definition of human was more fluid in general. And so one of the things with this question of, are we sure we want to return to normal, there are certain things that we're all striving for, definitions that are highly indexed on sort of like patriarchal understandings of success and more money and all of this, and these sort of things are driving a lot of the problems in the world. And so the question is really like, is this where we want to return? Are there alternatives, community over individuality? And so I think this is one of the really interesting things. I think you do have to point, and that's one of the important things of art. You have to point to problems, but I think it's also important to offer alternatives.
So this question was not only touched by the fact that we have a pandemic and we have to change our habits. It's a general question which...
Yes, I agree. The pandemic is a flashpoint, but I think that there's a lot of things, personally, I think that we prioritize to our detriment.
Christina.
I wasn't sure if Jenny wanted to say something about the feminine.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry, I interjected again.
Did you want to?
I was checking if you wanted.
He
took over, and
let's open this back up.
Isn't that the very feminine behavior?
I think the question Guido asked is very justified. I have to admit that Dwayne told me about his plans for this project earlier on, and now that you were talking about it, I was wondering why I did not ask myself that. I remember asking you if I understood you right, that you will do it with Toby because he's not a woman, and then you explained to me the concept of that it's not really to do with sex or gender, but femininity. But I think you're right. I think I would find it very strange if you would make a project about femininity and there would not be any feminine voice actually involved in the creative process.
But I think...
I misunderstand.
No, it's interesting, because I think that I would say that there's nothing necessarily tying a woman to being feminine. so to speak, nor should they be necessarily tied. And so to suggest that there's no feminine involved in this, I think, is exactly the sort of thing that I'm interested in critiquing, because I find in my life a lot of the greatest happinesses have been from places where I don't maintain, so to speak, things that are more normatively rigorously held as male and female. And so when I see they don't make me any less male, even if I happen to like them aspects of femininity. And so I think that I would critique in this sort of like really sort of gender fluid sort of context, is there femininity involved just because they're women? What is femininity, so to speak? And I think these are the questions that, and the reason that we're looking at it with two men, because, and also what trans theory also proposes, you know, this sort of question of where does femininity lie and who has a right to it, or you know, is it woman? Is it?
So we see this is a really we say ein weites Feld, a huge, vast field of themes which deserves to be discussed. We have around 3.5 minutes remaining. I want to bring back the focus to something very concrete. You were in Dortmund with the Beamed also, and I think there were some stories about clashing of real people from Dortmund to the festival, and this was for me very interesting to hear that, for example, I think you were part of this, that people suddenly play Fußball and they ignored the fact that there is art presented. Could you tell us a little bit about this real life experience? Because this discussion we had a few minutes now is very elevated, very educated, very reflection based. Maybe tell us about the real world.
The real world.
Toby, do you want to? You were dancing at the time, I think, yeah.
I was at Jenny as well with Make a Move. We were all there. Nora, me, Jenny, and Make a Move Collective were there, and a big screen. And it's kind of an itchy area on top. In Dortmund, we arrived, and police guys just controlled a guy next to us. So it was kind of a interesting area to come to, and where it's really kind of also clashing a bit. But it's really interesting to see who is sitting down all of a sudden with his beer or not, and now sometimes, and who was like then watching us performing or watching the movies. And of course they got distracted with playing football, or sometimes also maybe pretending to not be interested, because this is the cultural high art kind of fields, so which they're not part of, but they of course they're kind of interested in, but they are also told to not pay attention to. They're told to not take part in it.
The Coining House is in a socioeconomically impoverished area, and that's why it's there. But it's also known that the parks around there are where people go when they want to purchase illegal contraband, so to speak, or drugs, and so.
But what I would find an interesting question is, because I think part of the concept of Beamed was also with free entrance and playing in open, not only public spaces but open spaces. I mean, the Polar Wiesen in Cologne, that's a very open space. So I would find it interesting if Beamed could be able to continue next year or the year after that to I don't know, maybe think about that more. Think about how to open it up for a more diverse audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a reflection that happened throughout. We had lots of conversations with everybody. Toby had the idea also to talk to Coining House, and that perhaps that their classes and there are other things that they could show there during the day, that to try to integrate more and more of the institutions involved.
Because I thought also, instead of us performing there, for example, especially at this house, they've already hip hop workshops for teenagers and stuff happening there. So why not like maybe work with them for a week and then they present what they're doing, and then you also attract families from this area and you integrate a bit more. And I think that's something to look at for next year.
Like to go away a little from a top-down presentation.
Exactly. We don't have to present always ourselves. It can also be like we did a bit in Mannheim.
It would be very Dwayne Holliday style, because as long as I know you, one of the most interesting words I learned from you is transgressive. And wouldn't it be a very interesting transgressive perspective to integrate more of what was named now?
Absolutely. And along with that, I just want to sort of kind of detour, but around this theme. Again, just how necessary this whole community is to make something like this happen, because these discussions with Tobias, I've had discussions with all of you guys about these things, and these reflections happen, and I agree. I would like to make it much more accessible and much more open. I've found that you need a good enough concept to get funding and to show that you can pull this off, but that it's actually after you do it once that you can really start to evaluate what is it you've done, what can and can it not do, how does it work, what doesn't work, and I think discussions like this are also a really big part of how to evaluate these things and to grow.
So this is a very nice last sentence in the discussion. I, for my part, say thank you very much to be with you together. And I hope this is not the last time we will see us. And now the last words of maybe express your, what I don't know, the last feelings to Dwayne.
I would like to express my thanks to all of you guys for making the time to be here, to the Brotfabrik Bonn, Marcus and Flo and Erika and Stefan. I'm really grateful. Alessandro, who really helped and carried this, to Angie, who did all the music and is just absolutely fabulous, also to organizing sound equipment. And to NPN, especially for funding this project. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And to just the really beautiful situation of knowing wonderful people and collaborative and reflective artists. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
So have a nice evening.
And thank you to all of the audience. Thank you so much.